Good evening. I'm John Kasich, and we're live from Columbus, Ohio. Here's the latest on Dru Sjodin. She's the young student who has been missing for 3 weeks. The National Guard has been called in to help in the search, while the man accused of kidnapping her, Alfonso Rodriguez, still refuses to talk to authorities. We're joined by sex crimes prosecutor Stacey Honowitz and Martin Andrews, a sexual assault survivor who believes sex offenders like Rodriguez should be held in containment camps. Thanks for being with us. Stacey, how do you get Rodriguez to cooperate with authorities?
Well, you know, it's a real difficult situation in trying to get him to cooperate, and certainly his lawyer who represents him isn't going to tell him to cooperate. I think that the only thing, like in this case, was an emotional handout by his mother, by Dru's mother, to please get him to cooperate, please get him to say something. I mean, certainly you can't offer him any kind of deal at this point, and so I think that's really the only way that you can get to him.
Well, Stacey,
some kind of emotional plea.
You got this blood evidence in the car. He's charged with kidnapping, apparently cleaned out his truck, had a knife in the back of the trunk that was sitting in some kind of cleaning fluid. Is there any doubt in your mind that this man could have been involved in getting rid of this woman, or else passing her to some sort of an accomplice?
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but I think basically what you're asking is if I think that there was some kind of involvement, and I think anybody who listened to that evidence, anybody who hears the evidence that's in the car, the blood evidence, would definitely believe that he had some type of involvement without pointing the finger and saying he did it himself. You have to look at all of this as a reasonable person and say, obviously, there's some type of involvement.
Well, I guess for the life of me, I can't understand, and we're not going to say he did it, we don't know, but for the life of me, I can't understand why we can't get some cooperation out of him. You know, it's just unbelievable. Let's put his record up on the screen for people to see, because frankly, it's mind-boggling. Look at this. In 1974, he commits 2 rapes. In 1975, Rodriguez is sentenced to 15 years. He's released in 1979 after only 4 years. I think it was a lawyer that put him in some sort of a hospital. Then in 1980, he stabs and threatens a woman. In 1980, he's convicted of aggravated assault. Then he's released, and then he's arrested again. And apparently, there was a report that came out just recently that said that he has tendencies towards violence towards women. Stacey, how does a guy like this get out?
It's incredible, and the one factor that I think the general public has to know is this isn't the only guy that happens to. You know, you will see with a lot of repeat offenders that they get sentenced to a certain amount of time, and because of gain time and overpopulation in the prisons and because of appeals, that they do get out. So what happens in these cases are they're sentencing guidelines, and either they depart from those guidelines, or, like I said, because of population and overcrowding in the jails, they let them out early. And certainly that's what these civil commitments, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep these people in.
Martin, you were put in a box in chains for a week. What do you feel like when you hear that somebody like this, whether this guy was directly involved in this or not, what do you feel when somebody like this gets released?
It's absolutely outrageous. These people, have no business being on our streets. When you notice this over and over and over again, this behavior that they get out, they do it, they get out, they do it again. How can we, with good conscience, how can a state with good conscience release someone like this to the streets?
Well, Martin, tell us very briefly what happened to you when this man put you in this box.
Well, I was kept there for 8 days. This box was buried out in the woods of Suffolk, Virginia, and he stayed out there with me. This is a guy who was twice convicted. He was out on bail, awaiting trial for assaulting another young boy. He sexually assaulted me for the entire week, and then left me chained and buried in this box, buried out in the middle of the woods.
Well, Stacey, listen, we had a sex offender that we interviewed who said that, even though he is now out, he can't say that he would not commit a crime again. In fact, he said these sort of sexual criminal acts are like a narcotic to him. He can't even stop himself. What's your experience in terms of what these folks are like?
Well, I've been prosecuting these cases for 16 years in the office and 12 years specifically in these types of cases, and he's 100% right. These types of individuals are master manipulators, and unfortunately, it's very nice for him to say right now that he doesn't think he can control himself, but quite often when psychologists and psychiatrists try to interview these people to find out if they would be a risk, they're very manipulative. Oh, no, I would never touch anybody again. I can control myself.
You know,
it's not the truth.
I got to tell you, this story is unbelievable. This whole thing makes me ill that these people are not in civil confinement. Now, Martin, what are you trying to do nationwide to change this?
Well, we would, well, this past year we got Virginia's civil commitment law funded and put into place, and now we've got
that means
11
if you're going to be released, that means if you're going to be released from prison, you are still held. Is that correct?
Exactly right. Civil commitment, they take these offenders who are about to be released, who exhibit a high propensity for recidivism, of repeating their crimes, and they put them into mental institutions, and they keep them there off the streets until they can prove that they are no longer a danger to the public. If that's for life, then that's for life.
Martin, look, you know, I want to thank you for what you're doing. We are going to stay on this story, and I'll tell you why. Not just this story, but this whole business. Mothers and fathers have a right to be protected. So do all people from folks like this. Let them do their time, but let's hold them until they're not going to be ever a threat. Coming up.